Busy time of year in the college sports world. And when it comes to Purdue, there's no exception. We are obviously in the full swing of the college football season. And the knock that you hear is not a ghost or a vampire or a Halloween monster at your door. It's the knock of the college basketball season, which is just around the corner. Thank you so much for tuning into the Banter podcast. I am your host, Dustin Schutte of Purdue Boilermakers on SI. You can read my content at si.com/college/Purdue. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And one of the reasons why, other than just, giving in the weekly podcast here, but one of the reasons why I thought it was important to record today was because there's been a lot of happenings, and certainly there's plenty to talk about on the football side. I'll save that for another podcast. But one of the things that's been really happening has been the influx in commitments in terms of the college basketball side. And obviously these things have had I don't know if major impact is the right word, but they've certainly had some sort of impact on Purdue and what it's doing, what Matt Painter's doing, what their staff is doing. A lot of that stuff has unfolded here in the last week. So I thought with some of the recruiting news, we're starting to get some more information regarding, there's some schedule updates. We've gotten media days information. We have fan day stuff. And so I'm going to try to keep it concise and to the point here today, and hopefully get you some information that you find useful and fun as, again, Purdue on October 24th heads to Lexington. That will, for the exhibition game against Kentucky, that's going to be really the first time we get to see the Boilermakers in action. They'll have another exhibition game against University of Indianapolis on the 29th. And then obviously their first game will be on November 4th at home against Evansville. Again, thank you so much for tuning into the Boiler Banter podcast. I couldn't help but also get a spooky season, few references in there into the intro. Hope everybody is having a good start to the month of October, even though, look, a lot of you guys know I live in St. Louis right now, so I do a lot of traveling back and forth between West Lafayette and sometimes some of the road venues. And I don't know what the traveling part has to do with my next comment, but it's been hot as hell here, right? Like for October, it's in the mid 80s. And I think finally next week, it's supposed to cool down. I think across the Midwest, it's been relatively warm for this late in the year. So I am crossing my fingers and toes because I am ready. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for flannel shirt weather. I'm ready for sweatshirt weather, fire pit weather. I used to live in Florida and Atlanta, and kind of right now I don't understand how that was possible because I'm so tired of the heat. I'm just ready for those crisp fall days. And no, I don't attend a lot of pumpkin patches or go apple picking an awful lot. So it's not just that. I'm just ready for some cooler weather. But while we're talking about the heat, one of the things that is not cooling down right now is also stuff that's happening on the recruiting trail, on the basketball side of things. Some big announcements have come up in the last week. And first we'll start with, Purdue getting a commitment from Rivers Knight, a kid who is out of Durham, North Carolina, but he transferred up and he's going to finish his prep career at La Lumiere High School or Prep Academy up there in LaPorte, Indiana. Look, a 6'8", 6'9" power forward who really flew under the radar. There were a lot of people earlier in the summer who were talking about, where is Purdue trying to find this diamond in the rough? And then many times I mentioned, Luke Ertl was that diamond in the rough. In 2024, he was a 3-star recruit. I think he was ranked around 150. But if you want your diamond in the rough, I think Rivers Knight maybe fits that description because this is a kid who was ranked outside the top 200, 3-star rating. There wasn't a lot of buzz around him, at least from a national perspective, on the Purdue recruiting trail. But here's a kid that just, I don't want to say out of nowhere because I'm sure there have been some insiders probably over at On3. Brian Newbert does a really good job covering the recruiting side. There probably have been some insiders that maybe knew that this was a possibility, but certainly this wasn't one of the kids that a lot of fans had targeted as someone who would commit in the next few weeks. And on a Sunday afternoon, as Purdue's getting ready to play Illinois in one of their Mackey volleyball matches, I'm sitting up there and I see, Rivers Knight has committed to Purdue. and gives them their third commitment in the class. And when I watched him play, I think you can acknowledge that there's probably a lot of room to work there. He's a very talented kid. At his position, he looks like he'll play maybe a more traditional 4 spot, similar to the way Trey Kaufman-Renn plays the 4 spot. He can get his back to the basket. He can post up. What really impressed me was his ability to play defense on the interior. He seemed to have a really good nose for the ball, didn't bite on a lot of ball fakes. He's also a very aggressive rebounder. And as we know, last season, Purdue did not have that on the roster, even with Trey Kaufman-Renn, who is a good rebounder. But when he's your primary rebounder, sometimes that's going to lead to problems, especially when you play teams that have 3 or 4 really good rebounders on the squad. So I think this kid is a very good rebounder. I think he's a back to the basket type player. Now, that's not to say he can't develop his game. He obviously, in this day and age, everybody has the ability to shoot from range. He did demonstrate that a little bit in some of the clips I saw, but there's going to be a lot of room for growth. But where else better to grow that than in West Lafayette and work with Brandon Brantley and the ability to develop that low post game and maybe, develop the outside shot a little bit as well. So that was a surprise. His commitment, that was a surprise to me. I should be very clear on that. I know that we have, when you cover Purdue, it's a very intelligent fan base, very knowledgeable fan base, and they seem to know what's going on with the recruiting side. So I do apologize. I know sometimes I'm a little late on this stuff, but give me some grace. I am still getting used to the recruiting aspect of this, and living in St. Louis, it can be difficult. I try to reach out to some of these players, try to get you guys some good information, but sometimes it's swing and miss, right? Like that just happens. It's the nature of the business. I'm not going to be able to get everything. So that one to me was a surprise. There were a couple other things on the non-Purdue side or still impacted Purdue, but did not maybe go in Purdue's favor. The most recent was 4-star guard Junior County, who Purdue offered. Again, he was a 2024 kid that Purdue offered, 2026 player that Purdue offered in the summer of 2024. He most recently commits to Dan Hurley in UConn. I don't know that was a huge surprise, but he was considered to be a kid that was giving Purdue some serious thought. And so, that's just one of the players. And one of the things I'm going to say is, I don't know. Obviously, you want to accumulate as much talent as you possibly can get, and you don't want to hoard them, right? You don't want to hoard players and stick them on the bench, but you want guys who you think can contribute and can fit into your system. And I think Matt Painter thought that with Junior County. But at the same time, when you look at the talent they're going to have at that 1 through 3 spot on the roster moving forward, they've obviously still got CJ Cox, Jakari Harris, Omer Meyer, Antoine West Jr. They were able to land Luke Ertl. They were able to land Jacob Weber, who's a shooting guard. Maybe he can go off into that Fletcher Lawyer position where he can also play the three spot. So I don't want to say it's not a big loss, but I don't know that Purdue's really hurting for that 2-guard position. Certainly he would have been a nice guy to come in and maybe compete for some minutes, compete for a spot. But I think Purdue's in a really good spot with their 2 guards. So that's one that I wouldn't really sweat at this point. If you can get another 2-guard, maybe another under the radar top guy, I think you feel good about it. But that to me wasn't not a huge surprise that he's committing elsewhere, especially with the amount of talent Purdue has at the guard position, not just this year, 25-26, but then moving forward into the 26-27 campaign. 2 other players that were high on Purdue's radar and 2 guys that had considered Purdue in their top 4, Bo Ogden and Ralph Scott. Those were 2 guys that play they're listed as forwards. They're probably in the 3 to 4 spot range, depending on if they want to go small ball or if you want to play a traditional lineup. Both guys that could shoot, both guys that could score. Bo Ogden was, I think he was a much better shooter, much better scorer. And then Ralph Scott had certain attributes to his game. He was a good spot up shooter. Needed to work on some things defensively, but certainly good asset. But Bo Ogden commits to Texas. Again, that's not a huge surprise. His dad is the general manager of the Texas men's basketball team. So you probably knew all along that that's going to be a team that it's going to be hard to beat them out to get his commitment. And ultimately he decided to commit to Texas and he's going to stay home. Ralph Scott, I really did believe that Ralph Scott Purdue was a serious contender to land his commitment for the reason that, everything kind of unfolded so quickly for him, right? Like he was offered on September 10th. He agreed to go to and take an official visit to Purdue on September 17th. And then before you know it, he cancels some upcoming visits. I think it was to Syracuse, if I remember correctly, cancels that visit, moves his date to October 3rd, his commitment date, and trims his list to 4 schools, and Purdue's in the mix. And so when sometimes those things happen, the snap of a finger, you think, oh, Purdue's in a really good position because they just offered this kid. He took a visit. He must love what he saw. And that's not to say he didn't. He probably did. He was probably very intrigued by what he saw, what he experienced at Purdue, probably got along with Matt Painter and the staff very well. And then ultimately decided, hey, I'm going to decide even quicker. And so on Tuesday, makes his announcement. He's deciding between Houston, Purdue, Texas A&M, and Tennessee. Ultimately commits to Tennessee. And I personally just want to give a big congratulations out to the Volunteers out there. They finally were able to beat Purdue in something athletic related. Look, I think that this was probably the one that you thought was going to go Purdue's way and just didn't. And leading up to there, I know there were a lot of Purdue fans who expected Ralph Scott to commit to Tennessee. There were some indications, at least on social media, that he was probably leaning towards heading to Knoxville. But I still think that he was a contender. I think when you saw his game and the fact that he had risen so quickly on recruiting boards over the summer and the way that things transpired so quickly with Purdue, I thought there was a legitimate shot. I think a lot of fans thought there was a legitimate shot that he was headed to West Lafayette, but it won't be the case. And this is where you trudge forward. And again, we're in a situation where every player that Matt Painter recruits, whether they commit or not, you trust his judgment. And so one of the things that I see, and I'm going to mention this because this isn't a lot of Purdue fans. This isn't a vast majority of them, and even Matt Painter has said before, like we have some fans on here who go crazy, and that's not a representation of our fan base. It's just a few guys out there. But not every kid can commit to Purdue. You're not going to get it. There's a lot of kids out there who want to play basketball. There are a lot of really good options, a lot of really good schools that offer a lot of really good degree programs. And yeah, there might be some facilities. There might be more there might be a better chance to play immediately. There might be more money involved. I don't know what the case is, but there are some grown people who will take to social media and say things like, well, guess he did not want to compete for minutes. Or guess so-and-so has, he was enticed by the money. Not every player is thinking, like, just because they didn't commit to Purdue doesn't mean they don't want to compete for a spot. I'm not going to pretend to know the starting rotation at Tennessee or Texas. I'm not going to pretend to know what their NIL situation is like. Maybe that was a factor. Maybe those two things are a factor. Or maybe Rick Barnes had the same pitch to Ralph Scott as Matt Painter had the same pitch to Ralph Scott, right? Like those two things could have coincided. And he just said, you know what? I feel like I fit in at Tennessee best. Bo Ogden, maybe I fit in best at Texas. Junior County, maybe I feel like I fit in best at UConn. It's not just when they don't pick your school, you shouldn't take it as a personal offense, right? Like, let's get off that. It's nothing personal. These kids are, and sometimes kids do get bad advice. Sometimes they do make decisions that aren't in their best interest. That's just part of life. That's how things unfold. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. But don't take it personally when a kid doesn't commit to your program. I promise you it's not that deep. So, yes, there are some names on that list. Again, I think Junior County would have been a good addition to the team. I think Bo Ogden, I think Ralph Scott, I think all three of those guys, if they would have collectively, individually, however you want to say it, would have committed to Purdue, they would have brought something. They would have contributed in some way. They would have certainly helped the depth and the talent of the roster for 26-27 moving forward. But it didn't happen. Let it go. The thing that you have to remember is, again, Matt Painter turned Zach Edey into a 2-time National Player of the Year. He was a 300 ranked player. Braden Smith was a 3-star kid who Matt Painter never watched live. He is now one of the, if not the leader, then one of the leaders to be the National Player of the Year and a 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year. Right? Trey Kaufman-Renn came in, redshirted his first year, all Big Ten player. He's probably going to be in contention for the Karl Malone Power Forward Award. right? Like there are a lot of examples of Matt Painter getting kids who have been under the radar, who have not performed. And on the same token, he's also Caleb Swanigan, 5-star player who after 2 years goes to the NBA. So Matt Painter, the staff, they know how to develop talent. They know the type of kids they're recruiting. You just have to be patient with it and see how this is all going to unfold. But again, the bigger point here is not who they're going to get, who they're not. It's don't take it personally when they don't pick your school. That's been to me, it's just been a little bit interesting to see how that's kind of unfolded. And there's certainly some people that shouldn't have social media accounts, or if they do, then they need to take a lesson in maturity there. But one of the things I did want to also mention is with those kids committing elsewhere, what this also leaves available is there are 3 really big names. Well, if you want to throw in a fourth, I'm happy to do so. But there are 4 really big names that are still on the board for Purdue that would fill that 3-4 spot. And certainly I don't think Purdue's going to get all 3 of them, but I think they might get one of them. Cam Williams, the 5-star prospect, he's a top 5 talent in the 2026 class. 6'11". He's narrowed down his list. He's really focusing on 6 or 7 schools. Purdue is one of them. Another one that I'm really high on is Colbin Landrew out of the Atlanta area. He's a kid who's 6'6", 6'7". He is extremely versatile. He can play both the 3 or a small ball 4 for you. He can do just about anything on a basketball court. He's narrowed his list of options down. I think he's considering about 6 or 7 schools. Again, Purdue is in that mix. And then Anthony Thompson, another top prospect in that 2026 class, also has narrowed down his list to 6. All 3 of these kids are really in the 6 to 7 school range, and they're all still considering Purdue. They're narrowing their focus down, and Purdue is in the mix for all of them. So Purdue's still they may have not had some things go their way recently, but they're still in really good shape for 3 of these kids. They may get 1, they may get 2, they may get none. I think it's very unlikely that they're going to get all 3. But those are 3 kids that you look at and you think Purdue has a large void to fill with Trey Kaufman right at the 4 departing. They have some guys that they think can fill that role coming in. Obviously, Raleigh Burgess, who is there now, who I don't know this for sure, but I think is probably going to redshirt this year just because of the minutes. Jack Banter, who they feel confident can play the 4 position. Now you've got Rivers Knight coming in. But if you were able to get a Cam Williams, an Anthony Thompson, or a Colbin Landrew, I think you feel confident that one of those, if you get one of those guys, probably more so, Cam Williams certainly more than anybody, but if you get Cam Williams, I think you feel confident that he's going to be there for 1 to 2 years, probably max, and then he'd be off to the NBA. And so that gives you a redshirt year plus an additional year for Rivers Knight to really develop his game, and maybe he's able to solidify his spot as either a starting 4 or at least maybe make major contributions in some sort of a backup role, right? Colbin Landrew and Anthony Thompson would be a little bit more interesting because I don't think they're traditional 4 players. They would probably be more of a wing. They could probably fill roles between the 2 and the 4 spot. But again, as I mentioned, it feels like Purdue's loaded at that 2 guard. They can probably shift some guys over to the 3. So, but those are just some things to keep an eye on, right? And then the other situation, like Purdue has no 7-footer in this 2026 class, right? So that's the other thing to keep an eye on. I think I can never pronounce his name correctly, so I apologize. Sinan Juan, the Georgetown prep product from Rockville, Maryland, who played on China's FIBA U19. I get those 2 mixed up all the time. FIBA U19 World Cup team averaged 5 blocks per game. Right, he's one of those guys that I think really fits the Purdue mold, and if you're able to get him into a system with the talent they have around him, his ability to block shots, play on the defensive end, I think he would be a really good fit, especially to come in and probably provide Daniel Jacobson some relief, because you think that Daniel Jacobson down the long term is probably going to be the starter, regardless of whether or not he wins that job against Oscar Clough this offseason. But he's probably going to be the starter. If you're able to get Sinan Juan, I apologize. I just feel like I'm mispronouncing his name every time I say it. But if you're able to get him, he can probably come in some sort of backup role. And we know that Purdue loves centers, and they're going to want to add another center. So those are just 4 names that I wanted to keep an eye on, and just provide some updates on the recruiting front here, because obviously there's been a lot happening. And as we get closer to December, things are going to continue to speed up. But right now, with Luke Ertl, Jacob Weber, and Rivers Knight, Purdue has, per 247 Sports, they have the number 4 ranked recruiting class. And it's hard to see them finishing with a class outside of the top 10, assuming they're able to get 1 or 2 more signatures. We'll see how it all develops. Obviously, recruiting rankings don't matter that much, but I know it would give fans provide a lot of excitement if they're able to land a top 10 class in the 24/7 Sports rankings. And by the way, if Purdue gets nobody else in this 2026 class, which I still think is highly unlikely, I think we've seen Matt Painter values high school recruits developing, getting guys into their system, into their program, developing or maintaining that culture. They've already developed it for 20 years, but maintaining that culture, I think, is very important. But even if they don't, you can go to the transfer portal and get 2 or 3 guys. There are going to be guys that would love to come to Purdue who are going to fill those positions. So there are still a lot of options on the table for Purdue. It's just going to be very interesting to see where these next couple of weeks lead us and how the recruiting front kind of unfolds. Some of the other quick notes just wanted to get to: media days, Big Ten basketball media days, both the men and the women are going to happen next week. We're going to have those on Wednesday and Thursday. It all starts with the women on Wednesday, October 8th. And Katie Gerald's is going to be in town. Lana McCarthy and Madison Layden-Zay are the 2 players she'll be taking with her. So we'll get an update there on the women's basketball team. I wrote some stories about them. They're going to be without Taylor Henderson for some time. She's the transfer from UNC Wilmington, who is a 5'11" guard, and really liked her combination of size and what she could do. She could really attack the paint, get to the rim, draw contact, get to the foul line. So that's an early blow for the Boilermakers, but Katie Gerald did say in her most recent media availability that she feels good about where this team is right now. She feels like they're ahead of schedule. They've caught on very quickly. So they will play their first game on November 3rd, just the night before the men start their season. So interesting. We have some good questions planned for Katie and Lana and Madison to see where the women's team is. And obviously they're trying to bounce back from a disappointing 2024-25 campaign. And then on the men's side, obviously Matt Painter is going to be in town. Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith will be in Chicago as well to participate. So obviously going to be a lot of great questions there. And we'll anticipate Purdue's probably going to be the preseason pick to win the Big Ten. I can't imagine anybody else is going to supersede them this year. Michigan's probably going to be in the conversation. Michigan State, you'll probably get some mentions of maybe UCLA, Illinois, but I think by and large, Purdue's going to be the favorite. Braden Smith is probably going to be the favorite to win the Big Ten Player of the Year again this season after winning it last year, being the Bob Cousy Award winner, and then also first-team All-American, first-team All-Big Ten, and was a national finalist for the Naismith Player of the Year award. And then Fan Day, and let me tell you, I'm going to have to filibuster here for just a second because I got all excited. I had all my notes written, and what's the one thing I forget to do is I forget to go back and look up the date of Fan Day to provide it to all you fine people. So that's shame on me for not doing my homework properly and getting it all ready. So I had to, just talk randomly. Maybe we could talk about some Halloween stuff here while I find this and make sure I give you the right date. Yeah, Saturday, October 18th. Going to be at Mackey Arena. The doors are going to open at 9:30 a.m. The schedule is obviously 9:30. The doors are going to open. 10 to 11:30 is going to be the women's basketball practice and scrimmage. Then there's going to be about an hour period between 11:45 and 12:45 p.m. where players from both teams are going to sign autographs, take photos. You can't bring anything with you. Purdue will provide you with those autograph cards that kids and adults, whoever wants signatures, can have the players sign, but you can't bring in your basketball, can't bring in your hat, can't bring in that stuff for them to sign. I think that's probably a wise move because in today's world, that stuff's going to wind up on eBay or is eBay even still a thing? It's going to end up on one of those selling sites where they're going to try to sell it for a ridiculous amount of money. So I like this move from Purdue. Can't bring in your own stuff. They'll have autograph cards. That's all they're going to sign. So just be aware of that. And then from 1 to 2:30 p.m., the men's basketball practice and scrimmage that day. And right now, Purdue does not have a kickoff time for their game against Northwestern. It will be in Evanston, so the football team will not be in town. But if the game is coinciding with Fan Day, so if it's a noon kickoff, then Purdue will air the game on the Jumbotron inside Mackey Arena, so fans can watch men's and women's basketball practice and scrimmage, get some autographs, and then also watch the football team in action against the Wildcats in Evanston. So I want to thank you again for tuning into the Boiler Banter podcast, and I'm under 30 minutes right now, so I'm just going to ask this question. A lot of you are probably going to turn this off, and that's totally fine. You got your Purdue info, you got your Purdue insight, but I'm going to ask, every year I try to watch something different, at least one new Halloween movie. Doesn't have to be a scary movie. And so the last couple years I have watched the new version of It. A couple years ago, I watched Night of the Living Dead for the first time. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what I watched last year was Salem's Lot. That was the first time I had seen that. This year I'm looking forward to watching Nosferatu. We're also watching the Haunting of Hill House, which is the Mike Flanagan Netflix series. What are some of the other ones that are either your favorite Halloween movies, things you watch every year? So I'm going to give you an example, and this is terrible. This is a terrible example, but one of my favorite Halloween movies that I have to watch every year is Sleepy Hollow, like with Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci? I believe that's her name. It's not a good movie, but like the backdrop, the scenery, the storyline, the lighting, it's a typical Tim Burton, get you in the mood for Halloween type of movie. So I want to hear your favorite Halloween movies. I'm going to ask kind of maybe an October or Halloween question throughout these Boiler Banter podcasts through the month of October, and we'll try to keep some holiday themes going to keep things fun. But if you have a favorite movie, or if you have a movie you think I should watch, let me know, drop it in there. Otherwise, if you want just strictly Purdue content, again, this is the Boiler Banter podcast. You can visit my YouTube page. It's Dustin Schutte, and the Boiler Banter podcast will pop up. You can read my content, si.com/college/Purdue. We got plenty of football, women's basketball, men's basketball, volleyball content up there right now. And you can see me on social media at Schutte Dustin on Twitter. I want to thank you again so much for tuning into the Boiler Banter podcast. I will talk to you guys soon.